Those of you who are not aware of NELL, please do find us on social media. We've got Facebook, we've got Twitter, we've got a website. The website is www.nell.network, and that'll give you any information that you might seek about who we are and what we're trying to do. So the first session is lessons from our political journeys.
My name's Karen Lockney and I'm a Cumbrian County Councillor for Denton Home in Carlisle and a member of Penrith and the Border CLP, and I'm honoured to be chairing the panel today. This session is all about hearing the speakers' experiences and reflections on their political journeys to date, and that's obviously going to be inspiring to all of us, those who are in elected positions or are considering them for the future, but also everyone that's come to this inaugural conference, remembering that the aim of NELL is to get socialists elected, and we've all got an interest and a responsibility to consider how we support each other in that aim. So I know from personal experience that I wouldn't have been elected if it hadn't been for the invaluable support of others, and we can't make political journeys on our own, nor in my view as socialists should we. So I'm going to let the speakers introduce themselves in a bit more detail, but to warmly welcome to NELL's first conference, Gemma Bolton, an NEC candidate, former parliamentary candidate and a chair of the Campaign for Labour Party Democracy.
I joined the party aged 17 back in 2015. I was like thousands of other young people who just were inspired by Jeremy Corbyn's leadership bid and like the change that he and the fight for a better society that he sort of advocated for. So now I'm one of like over 100,000 young members that our movement has. And when I joined, I didn't plan to get involved. I wanted to vote, and that obviously changed massively. I was at college and I joined with my mum simply to vote for Jeremy Corbyn because we loved what he stood for, and his fight for everybody. And a few weeks after, this is the thing that inspired me to get involved, was a few weeks after we joined, a guy in his late 70s came to our door. He's called Dave, and he told us that a branch meeting was coming up. And as I said, we didn't plan to get involved, so we missed the meeting. And a few days later, a woman came to the door. This was Carol, Dave's wife, Carol. And I think she was trying to do this sort of nice, soft persuasion. So we thought, well, God, we better go then, because we'll look awful if we don't. So eventually we decided to come to the meeting. And we just met the most wonderful people, like lovely, like passionate activists, and we obviously became really active and took up branch and CLP positions, and became really firm friends with everybody in my constituency. So then a few months later, the regional board elections rolled around, and Dave again insisted that I'd be great, and eventually persuaded me to stand. And I thought, well, why not? Like, it's really unlikely that a regional conference will elect an 18-year-old to the position, but they did. And that's what set off my sort of really keen interest in party democracy, or what I realised quite quickly was lack thereof of party democracy, and raising members' voices loud. And that's how I ended up joining CLPD and becoming the co-chair, and standing for other positions like the Women's Conference Arrangements Committee. And how I ended up now running for the NEC. And I sit in all these meetings because I just love enjoy like complicated discussions about process, but I do so because I'm committed to a mass movement socialist democratic Labour Party that's going to oppose the Tories. It's going to fight for peace and socialism and internationalism here and abroad. So that's why I'm so pleased to be on the left, on the grassroots voice slate for the NEC, and in fact we're backed by the Centre Left Grassroots Alliance, because we have to fight for a transformative Labour government, one that is inspirational. I joined like the thousands and tens of thousands of other young people because the party offered inspirational change and the fight for a better society, and Labour has to still offer that, the inspiration that brought so many young people to canvass, to sing at Glastonbury, not to give up hope in a better society. One thing Jeremy Corbyn can take credit for is the turnaround in youth voter apathy. I know hardly any young people who don't go out and vote, and and of those young people, hardly any vote anything but Labour. I think that's what the truly radical, incredible thing that took place in politics, is that young people were so disempowered by the system before, felt that there was a point in getting involved in voting and campaigning and working to see the change, because finally we offered something that was different from the other parties, and different from sort of the direction of sort of politics over the last few years. And you know what amazed me during like a tough few years for us on the left, and especially tough and very, very cold general election campaign, was the drive and dedication and commitment, and honestly sheer number of activists compared to sort of the Labour Party that I first joined over the last few years. It just ballooned massively in like active members. Yeah, I was really proud to fight for my home constituency, but it was a seat we were really unlikely to win. So when we were sending our core activists away to marginals, and yet every time we organised an event locally, we had like loads of energetic, excited, diverse, mostly young people coming out to fight for change in the constituency. And my favourite anecdote was that we planned one branch, like town centre stall day, and it was just a random one throughout the campaign that we'd held. We didn't realise that the Conservative candidate was launching her campaign at a stall next to ours. And when they got 5 people out to launch her campaign, we had over 30 excited activists who just turned out on a random Saturday to fight for a Labour government. And I just couldn't believe that. And we have to build on that. And those amazing members and activists have to be at the heart of our party and engage in decision making. They have to be able to hold those elected positions to account. You know, far too often in the Labour Party, members have been sidelined. And while this did begin to change under Jeremy Corbyn, there's still so much further to go. So that's why I'll always be a vocal campaigner for member-led democracy, and that's what I'll fight for on the NEC. Thank you for listening to me talk about what got me into politics.
Thank you very much, Gemma. That's a really inspiring start. Thanks ever so much. Catherine, if you could say a little bit about your position, thank you.
Oh, hi. Well, I'm Catherine Donovan and I'm the Deputy Leader of Gateshead Council. I grew up in a socialist family. Mum and dad. Dad was a bus driver. Mum was, she ran a voluntary playgroup for 30 years in our community. And I was very proud in 2002 to have been elected to the ward that I grew up in and I still live in now. It's an absolute privilege, and was in the beginning and still is now. My career was, I was a nurse, I was a midwife, and I was a health visitor. And I worked in the NHS for 27 years, and during that time, it would never have occurred to me that I was going to be a counsellor, never. In my younger years, 20s and 30s, it's not what happened. You didn't see many young counsellors, and certainly not many who actually worked, and certainly not very many women. So it was quite a surprise to me, really. About 2002, there was a vacancy in our ward, and it was my dad actually, because my dad was also a counsellor, said to me, "Why don't you go for it?" And to be honest, at the time, and I think this is a barrier to a lot of candidates, particularly women, I had a lack of confidence then, a great lack of confidence to put myself forward. But I was persuaded by members in the ward and friends and comrades to do it. And when I did, I actually found that I had something to contribute. You know, the experiences, the life experiences that I'd had, which was I'd been a single parent for a number of years. As I say, I'd been a nurse, but I was also an active member of the National Union of Public Employees, NUPE, Rodney Bickerstaff, one of my heroes. And I was an activist for many, many years. But then when my son came along, I found it difficult to get to meetings and things. Me and my 2 brothers were brought up to believe that, you know, in socialism, my grandparents had lived through very difficult times in the 30s and 40s, as many families, exactly the same. But we were brought up to think that things could change, that things didn't have to be the way that they were, because we'd heard about what it was like before the welfare state. And we knew that, you know, if you're in the party and you argue for change, it can happen. And that was the way that it came to us. To say a little bit about the Labour group when I started, we were targeted by the NEC because there were only 13% of women in the Labour group at that time, which seems incredible now, because there's about, it varies between 50, 52%. We have actually at one point did have more women than men due to positive action. And it was very difficult to get to, and because of that, it was very difficult to have role models. I mean, hats off to the pioneering women, really, who I have to say had a particularly difficult time, who were there, you know, in the 60s and 70s. And I knew them personally, and I knew that the difficulties that they'd experienced, both like with things like childcare and also, I suppose, making their mark within the Labour group. In 2004, I was elected onto the cabinet, and in 2016, I became deputy leader of the council. The first woman deputy leader. We'd never had one before, but yeah, you know, it was 2016. We're still waiting to have a leader of Gateshead Council who's a woman, but I think that over the years we've made a lot of progress. As I say, I think that a lot of people don't really think that they've got a lot to contribute, whereas each person brings a different perspective to the council. You know, they bring their work experience and their home experience, their life experience. And what I would say to people out there is you can do it. You know, all you need to do is be committed to the place that you represent, be community minded, want to change things, and feel sure that things can change if you work hard at it. And I think that's all I want to say for now.
Thank you very much again, also inspiring, so thank you very much indeed. So if we can pass over to Emma, please. Hi Emma, thank you.
Thanks Karen, afternoon everyone. Thanks everyone for asking us to be part of your inaugural meeting today, and I hope that we can see some much needed political changes here in the North East through this group, and that we set an example for elsewhere to follow. Now, my journey into politics definitely wasn't one of your standard ones. I don't come from one of those wealthy backgrounds. I wasn't from a family steeped in politics in the sense that there were activists in the party or involved in the trade unions. Even when I first got to Parliament in 2013, I remember being struck by the number of MPs whose prior roles had been working for the party, working for an MP, working in a trade union or in a think tank. And whilst there is nothing at all wrong with any of that, it does tend to create groupthink and a cosy club where everyone's connected prior to being elected, and then when they're working in the Commons day in and day out with each other, that connection deepens. So I suppose for me, I've always been a bit of an outsider then, and I sometimes often feel like one still now. I'd never even set foot in Parliament until the day that I arrived there as the MP for South Shields. I'd always said I didn't want to be there until I'd earned my place there as an MP. And I remember walking to Westminster Hall at the time with Ed Miliband, and there was lots of Labour MPs behind us, and I'm looking around like in complete awe at the place and absolutely fascinated. And Ed stopped and said, what's wrong? And I said, well, this is beautiful. I've never been here before in my life. And he stopped every single MP behind us and said, Emma's never been here before. And everybody found that that was absolutely shocking. There was an assumption that to be a member of Parliament, I should have been down there constantly doing the rounds, you know, handshaking with people, all the rest of it. But the reality is, when you're studying and you're working full time and you don't have very much money, it takes a hell of a lot of effort to travel down to London just to shake hands with a few people and try and climb that pole. And I remember just thinking, that there is part of the problem. No wonder people like me and people from my background have to fight and struggle twice as hard to get in Parliament. Now, I grew up under Thatcher's rule from birth until I was 19 years old. The Tories ran our country. I remember distinctly the decay, the poverty and a devastation that they caused not just to my community, but my family too. And I remember being a kid, I was one of those weird kids who used to dream of being a member of Parliament because I wanted desperately to make a difference to the lives of the people in the place that I loved. But it was something I always kept a secret because, like Catherine said, you know, often you were told politics isn't for the likes of us. And certainly when I used to turn on the telly, there was no one that sounded like us. And there was definitely nobody that spoke about the things that mattered to us. But for me, it was people like my gran and my mum and dad didn't realise that what they were doing was real politics every single day. I used to often watch my dad and my uncles and my granddad walk up the bank from the shipyards on strike. My gran staged a sit-in at the town hall just so me, my mum and dad, when I was little, had a decent home to live in. They just never saw any of this as politics. They just saw it as doing the right thing. And I knew getting involved and getting to where I wanted to be would be really difficult. From the age of 14, I worked, had 17 jobs, I came my way through A-levels, a degree and a master's. When I was 24, I got elected as one of the youngest councillors in our borough. But because I wasn't a natural born public speaker, and I did lack quite a lot of confidence, and I didn't feel that the things that I had to say were that important or really mattered. So I used to spend my weekends honing my political skills, saving money up and travelling the country, going on training courses. And I remember eventually rocking up to my first ever CLP meeting, and everybody just relentlessly quizzing us and being really suspicious about who my family were, why was I there, what was my politics, etc., etc. And it was just really daunting and not the most welcoming of experiences. I remember being on the council, being patted on the head, asked to make the tea, more attention being paid to my boobs than my face, and every single time I called it out, but it can get really tiring. And some people might know this, but I see there's some people here from Carlisle, so they might well know this, but prior to the 2015 election, I stood for selection in Carlisle, and even though I had a niggle, I was still out of my depth. I thought, I'm going to go for it anyway, and it was grueling because I was working in Newcastle, travelling every night through to Carlisle, visiting members in their homes, asking for the support, travelling back, spending weekends in hotels there, and I didn't get selected. But I came a strong second out of 4 locals, and I thought, wow, I might actually be able to do this. Then in early 2013, David Miliband decided he was standing down. Now, my first instinct was the party will have someone sparkly and famous and well-polished lined up for this seat. But at the time, my uncle was dying, and I remember I was sitting holding his hand, and he said, you've got to promise me one thing, Emma, that you've got to try for this. So I did, and I ended up being elected as the first ever female MP for South Shields. So I kept my promise to my uncle, and I hope I do him proud. Many of you will know the well-documented bullying, misogyny and general nastiness that seems to have tarnished my CLP for many years, and the impact that that's had not only on me and my family, but our decent members who are the vast majority. But I want to let people know that I will never, ever let that impact on my work as a Member of Parliament or stop me believing in our party's core ethos, because our party is and can be a force for good, and we are needed now more than ever. So I am totally committed to doing the right thing. I do hope things will improve. I am proud of the brilliant team that we've built here in South Shields with the support of a lot of people on this call today. And, you know, I'm ever hopeful, as we all are, that things will get better, things will improve. And that's a quick snapshot of my political journey. I hope it continues, and I look forward to our discussion. Thanks for having us.
So I just wonder from the speakers, if there's anything practical you think, and particularly as NELL has this ambition to get socialists elected, anything practical that you think does help people from what we might term loosely working class backgrounds to stand for election in whatever sphere it is. You may feel you've already covered it, but if there's anything you can suggest, that would be great.
For me, it's working with the trade unions and working really closely with them to identify people who are workers, who are who have good politics, and you know, it's a core link between Labour and working people is the trade unions, and I think that the trade unions have really great political education programs that really does create active political working people that that can be put forward to stand, and also things that will help with trainings like Emma was talking about to give people the confidence to stand. So I think working closely with the trade unions in the North East is a really great way to find people and help develop people who might be who are working class and might be willing to stand for office.
Thank you. Catherine, anything further you would wish to add to that?
Well, Naib Evans said, didn't he, that a political party which begins to pick its personnel from unrepresentative types is in trouble. And I think we saw that prior to Jeremy coming into the leadership. I like to look at people who would never ever dream that they could do it. And I'm talking about people like people who are school governors. I mean, a friend of mine had been a school governor for 20 years. And when I asked her, did she ever think about being a councillor? She just was totally shocked, but persuaded her that, you know, that it's the same type of thing. It's about caring for your community, doing, you know, what you can to improve the lives of the people around you. And I think, you know, these days there are many community initiatives going on. So we'll have things like food banks, you know, that in our ward we have 2 food banks that we run. There are people who will volunteer there. So I would be like looking to them and like saying, you know, have you ever thought of that? Because unless we get people who come from the grassroots, I mean, then things are never really going to change. I mean, I noticed, you know, you know, people talk about people having degrees. Well, I've got a degree. I didn't go to university when I left school. I did it later on. But I mean, people have often like improved, you know, like improved their education as they've been working, and that often has been the only option for folk. But the thing about it is there are many jobs out there that, you know, lend themselves very nicely into working in politics. And it's just about seeing those people and giving them the encouragement, because I can't emphasize enough the issue, and Emma mentioned it as well, the issue is often confidence, just the fact that they don't feel that it's for them. And if you're representing your community and you're like acting on behalf of them, then that's all that the job is. You know, you find you go in to the council for the first time, you think, oh, I'm not really sure I want to say anything, but then it gets where you can't keep your mouth shut because you feel like you've got so much to say. And it was mentioned about ambition before, you know, do people have ambition, and about women have ambition? Yeah, I've got ambition. I've got a lot of ambition, but a lot of it isn't personal ambition. It's ambition for the role, so that I can do more to help the people who are in my community, so that I can speak up to them, so that we can use politics as a vehicle for ideas, as they say. So that's my ambition. My ambition is to get more people involved from the community and more people feeling confident to challenge what's going on.
Thank you very much again, and I couldn't agree with you more about that personal, of people just asking you one-to-one and believing in you. And I know I responded to that. The people that did that to me are sitting in this meeting and they know who they are, and it really does just the belief of people in you and their ongoing support. Thank you, Catherine. Emma, you did cover a bit of this area before, so I don't know if you've got anything further to add about the working class representation issue.
I mean, just something small, really. You know, I was a really shy kid, and I wouldn't be the one in the room speaking out, and it took a lot for me to get the courage to do that. So what I've done in my time as a local councillor, and then in my time as a member of parliament, is I tend to go around schools and sixth forms and community groups and parks and pubs and just speak to people informally and find out what they're up to and try and get them involved that way, because some people get really intimidated by being invited to a formal meeting and then being kind of under pressure to speak. So what I tend to do is reach out to people just when they're doing everyday things without even looking like I'm reaching out to them, and just have a general chat and say, oh, you know, what you up to, what you're interested in, that kind of thing. And I find that's a good way of bringing people into the party, but also getting, you know, genuine socialist people who are just part of their community and want to, like Catherine says, make a difference and care about it.
Yeah, thank you very much again. And I do think we sometimes overlook how scary it sometimes can be just turning up for your first meeting. Gemma mentioned that initially, and I remember turning up for mine. I remember not turning up to the first one that I intended to go to and having to be kicked out of the house to go to the second one. And Hilary, who is sitting in the bottom left-hand corner of my screen, smiling, now I don't know where she is, I was a bit phased, and she offered me a cup of coffee, and it was a simple gesture, but something that made me stay, and we're good friends now, so it all started off with that. So that warm welcome is essential. So we've got more female MPs than ever before, and I looked it up to prepare for this, and I think I was a little disappointed, but it is higher than ever before, 220 out of 650, and the Labour Party can be rightly proud of its efforts in recent years to support female candidates. So I wonder to what extent gender has been and remains an issue for you on your political journey. And often the political arena is considered male dominated, or the culture to be quite masculine, for want of a better word. I wonder if you've found that, and anything you wish to say about how you combat it. So just to stick with that order for fairness, Gemma, on that one. Thank you.
I haven't got a lot to say because I've been quite lucky, really. I've been really well supported by often what are sort of older men in the party who are keen to raise up younger voices or female voices. So in a way, I've been lucky personally, but I've definitely seen the toxic nature of some parts of our movement. We've seen it like in broad daylight with the allegations in the Elite report, and what we've seen happen within GMB. And I think sometimes they're very small aggressions, but they're definitely there against women in the movement. And I think what I've experienced is that when the party takes some complaints very seriously, it doesn't often take complaints of harassment or like low-level degrading of women particularly seriously, because it's not considered like a big aggression. It's just considered like, so they don't think there's anything of it. But I don't think we appreciate how much that can deter people and put people off of being involved in our movement. And it's definitely there. And I think sometimes what we have to do as comrades is be vocal when people feel like they can't be, because they think, oh, it's just such a small thing, I'm not going to say anything. That we have to be, no, that wasn't okay, you shouldn't have said that. And that it happens for a lot of different equalities issues, or even like age issues. Like I remember being at a EC meeting once, and I said, oh, don't we need to save some money for the roof, basically, because there might be no money for the roof. And the man went, what do you know? You've never had to deal with like roof or whatever. Anyway, the money got spent and then the roof broke. And that was like 6 months later, and I was just like, wow, what can I say then? So I think that there's a lot of little microaggressions. I think we have to call them out when we see them, no matter what they are and whether or not they've been done towards us, because I think if it's done towards you, often you won't say anything because you're embarrassed or you're whatever. So we have to identify when those happen and speak on behalf of others, because that's sort of what solidarity is.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Catherine.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Gemma. I think it has to be called out. Has it happened to me? Yeah, it has happened to me. Not long after I'd started on the council, one of the chairs of scrutiny pulled me to one side and said, you know, you really need to be attending more. You know, I was working at the time, had a family at home. My employer, NHS, was good, and I was getting time off. But, you know, it was tough. You know, it was hard work. And as I say, a lack of idea and understanding, I think, from someone who was like retired, who that was kind of the main thing that he had to do with his life, family all grown up and all the rest of it. And I think this is where like life experience comes in, because I could have just like, you know, run into the corner and, you know, thought woe was me, and I just turned about on him and just gave him a total piece of my mind, and by goodness he sharp backed off. Now, it's all right if you've got that confidence to do it. But I think what we need to be doing, and particularly among women, is to reach out to the women within our party, and certainly within our Labour group. I mean, I'm the chair of what we call the Councillor Support and Development Group. So any new councillors that come on, I meet with them and talk about what that group's about, which is mainly really just to, well, to support in any way, you know. And I try very hard to link in with new members, because I try and think about what it was like for me. And as I say, my dad was a councillor, so I was very lucky. I had him as a mentor. But, you know, there's lots of people who come on and could be in the unfortunate position of being the only member in that ward who's Labour, you know, and so they feel totally cut adrift. But I think from the point of view of gender and stuff, yeah, it has been tough. I mentioned before, 13% is an absolute disgrace. You know, in 2003 of women councillors in the Labour group. And I think that Positive Action's done a lot of that, and I have to say as well that it's changed the group. You know, it has changed the group. It obviously, because you've got different inputs. You know, when the cabinet system in Gateshead was started, I think it was 1998. It was all men. There wasn't one single woman on, not one single, and nobody seemed to think there was anything wrong with that. And then someone stood down and they thought, well, it'd be a good idea if they could encourage women. And many of you might know Linda Green, a great colleague of mine. And she was. But I was only the second one, and that was about another 5 years later. You know, I'm pleased to say now it's gender balanced, but, you know, this was the reality not that long ago. So we're still on a journey in lots of ways.
Thank you. Thanks again. And Emma, finally on that question.
I think for me, I've seen less of it in Parliament than I have on a local level, and I think that's the problem. Is nationally there's always loads of noise made about how sexist Parliament is and how there's misogyny rife in Parliament. If I'm entirely honest, from what I've seen, is most people in Parliament are aware of it, and really, you know, a lot of the men are really jittery about sometimes saying anything to women now. Whereas locally, as a councillor and as a member of Parliament locally, I've had it far worse. You know, I touched on some of it in my speech before there, but you know, I've been harassed and bullied, and you know, I've been shouted down in meetings, spoken over, subtly whispered threats in my ears when I'm about to get up and address the rest of the CLP, all these kinds of things. And you know, Gemma touched on it, that the party struggles with this because they don't seem to understand how bullying or harassment operates. They understand one-off events and they tackle them, but when you go to them with documented, that drip daily grind of stuff that's happened to you that is incessant and grinds you down and really hurts you and those around you, they seem completely unable to tackle it. And they'll say, well, where's the evidence? What's the issue? And you'll present, you know, piles and piles with statements from other people saying, I've seen this happen on a regular basis, and they just don't seem to be able to do anything about it. And it is really frustrating. And I think one of the saddest things for me is what I've seen is that a lot of other women will go along with it because it's easier than standing up to it. And that makes me really sad as well. There's been some women who've actually pulled me to one side privately and said, I was really sorry to see that happen. And I've said, well, you need to speak out. You know, you need to say it's something. I know it's hard, but you need to, because silence is just being complicit as far as I'm concerned. If me in my early 20s could do it in a room full of men when I was starting to be a local councillor, then I think, you know, other people should be able to do it when there's a big group of them. That's my view anyway.
So the next question is about unity, and we know that that's a word on everyone's lips, quite it's possibly an overused word at the moment. People on the left, the right, the centre, everyone is calling for it, and NELL calls on us to build and unite. So I suppose some people might say that's a difficult path for individuals on a political journey to tread. Other people might say it's the thing that keeps them going, is loyalty to one cause. I don't know where people on the panel stand on that, but I'm kind of interested, I'm sure other people are, whether that's been an issue for you at any stage on your political journey, and what advice you might give to people starting out. Gemma, thanks very much.
For me, it's trusting in like my politics or our politics, and knowing that our politics is for good and for equality and for human rights and for justice, you know, and like I'll always be unwavering in advocating for that. So I don't have to worry about what's unifying or not, but it's about like persuading people that your politics is what is right for society for me. And you know, like that does work. Like over the last like 4 or 5 years, there was like a YouGov poll of like support for nationalisation, like in the public, and nationalisation, the support of nationalisation rose massively just because we were advocating for it. Because like you don't just have to be like a weather vane of opinion, you have to like shape it and influence it, and that's within the party and outside of the party. So I don't think we should be on the level of, you know, be down on the level of like some of the more right wing of the party, like wrecking and undermining, but we have to pressure and be a force for good. And like left policies are popular with the public, and for Labour to win, we have to adopt those popular policies to get to government. So it's not wrecking to fight for them because we want a Labour government, and if we fight for them in the party, that's more likely to achieve a Labour government. So that's why you just keep fighting for that, because we know it's popular and we know it's for good. So for me, that's just all I'm going to do. I don't think it's about wrecking.
Okay, thank you. That makes it sound very simple, and sometimes I think perhaps it is, even though it seems so complex. Catherine, your thoughts on unity?
Well, as I said, I've been in the party a long time, and I think often unity seems to be compromise. in the past. Yeah, I believe the same as I've done since I was a young girl. My politics are exactly the same. Labour Party's politics has jiggled around a lot since then. You know, I mean, when we had so-called unity and we were being told, you know, with the Blair government and that, we had to give up on a lot of stuff. We introduced things like academies, there was the tuition fees, marketisation of the NHS, you know, not to mention the Iraq War. And the thing about it is, you know, it's all right, people saying let's have unity, and we all know that we've got people here who are saying it now who weren't pushing for unity over the last couple of years. They just weren't. Let's be honest about it. So to me, unity has to be how we work through, and we present things to conference, and conference is sovereign. It's not just in a case of disregarding it so that we can all be unified together. All of the policies that we've been pushing for over the last 4 years have been arguments that have been hard won. And it's all right, people saying now, well, you know, let's have unity, but maybe like tone it down a little bit, you know, tone down what you're thinking, tone down what you believe in. So I think unity can cover a lot of things. Having said that, on the council, some of my best friends and supporters, their politics isn't the same as mine. It isn't at all. So I think some of it's about mutual respect, listening to people, treating people in the right way, you know, not browbeating them, but having those discussions. But we cannot have it with unity where it's going to be, well, we have to sacrifice everything just to get into power, and that's my own personal view.
Okay, thank you very much. And Emma, I'm conscious that this is possibly a slightly different question for you in the sense that your actions that you take are more public with being a member of Parliament and kind of documented and up for judgment in a way that maybe people locally only experience on a local level. So I'm conscious of that, but if you can give your thoughts on that matter, thanks.
I mean, I think nationally, I've always tried to, if I disagree with anyone in our party, I always feel absolutely disheartened when I go on Twitter or Facebook and they're fighting out in the open. I think, you know, MPs were with each other pretty much all day, every day through the week. Why do you need to take to Twitter to start fighting each other? Just ring someone. You know, there's people I have disagreements with all the time. I ring them and say, do you want to have a cup of tea? I don't pick my phone up and tweet them in full view of the public. That's not how I do my things. And that's why I stopped attending Parliamentary Labour Party a long time ago, because it's a bear pit and it's all about point scoring, because they know the press is listening, they know the press is outside, and they want to get themselves in the papers. And I just get really sad that our party has this history of airing its fights in the public domain. We seem to always try and destroy ourselves in full view of everybody else. I do always, you know, if people ask me my views, I do express them. I try not to be personal, because for me, it's not about personalities, it's about the policies and the politics. And locally, obviously, I've touched on that, you know, we have a very different situation there, and I've spoken about that in many different arenas. And as for, you know, advice starting out on your own journey, I think it's just, you know, a bit like what Catherine and Gemma have said. Be firm on who you are and what you believe in, and don't ever waver, even if your view is going to be unpopular, even if you're stood in front of a room full of people and you think, oh, this is going to go down like a bucket of sick. Do it if that's what you believe in, and say it if that's what you believe in, because the minute you start compromising and not saying what you believe in or what your true values are, people will see through it. They'll see you as someone of no substance, and they'll not have faith or trust in you. And my other thing about advice on starting out on your own journey is always make sure you have jobs outside of politics as well.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm conscious of looking at the time that we're coming towards the end of this session. So as we move into those final just 5 minutes or so to give us time for a break, I'm just going to give people on the panel a kind of choice, really, of questions. I have 2 summing up questions, and I'm going to give you a choice because you might feel that you prefer to answer one than the other. They're not controversial. So one is just that to remind people that NELL's key aim is to get socialists elected. if there's anything you want to draw from or sum up, or that you haven't said yet, as to practical ways in which you feel that NELL can support people. You may feel you've already covered that, or alternatively, or as well, if you have the time, just to end on a positive note, really, for anyone listening who wants to start their own journey or is on that journey, and for those who are here to support others, just whether you enjoy your current role. We've spoken a lot about challenges. Do you enjoy it? Is it worthwhile for you? And why would you encourage anyone else to follow in your footsteps? Gemma, thank you.
I was really lucky because I always had people who I met in the movement who I knew would have my back no matter what happened. And I knew that, so if I got overwhelmed or something, they'd pick up any slack, or they'd just be there to have a chat with, like a cup of tea, if I'm feeling like overwhelmed about things. So I think for engaging people to stand, just saying to people that, don't worry, we're here for you, and you're not on your own doing it. You're doing it as part of a team. Just because you happen to be the sort of face of it doesn't mean it's just you. It's all of us. It's all of us together. And like, just because you might be on show doesn't mean there's going to be people who will always be supporting you. So that's what I would say for persuading people to put themselves forward for things. It's just to say, well, just because we're asking you to be the figurehead of it doesn't mean it is you. You're there with 50, 100, 200, 500,000 others. What was the second question?
Whether you enjoy it, sorry, whether you feel it's worthwhile.
I love it. I really love doing all of this stuff. I love how many, it's been amazing, because during the NEC campaign, I have literally visited all over the country. And this is why Zoom is so incredible, is that I was in Scotland, and then I was in Wales, and now I'm in the Northeast. And it's brilliant. I've met so many people, and I had amazing conversations with people all over the country. So I've really, really enjoyed that. I wonder a lot of the time, sometimes, why on earth I've done it. But there's so many, then something good happens, or we do something that changes things or makes things better for somebody, and then I'm like, oh, that's why. And then it's sort of, then I feel that it is worthwhile. So there's definitely ups and downs, but yeah, no, I've really loved being part of the Labour Party and the Labour movement. It's the best decision I ever made, was to go to that first meeting, although, back in 2015, and I love it.
Great, thank you very much. Thanks for that positive note. And Catherine.
Well, I love being Deputy Leader of Gateshead Council, and the reason that I love it is because I'm able to change things, sometimes maybe in a small way, but I like to think that, so if we take, for example, the COVID crisis, when it started, I mean, I'm involved with, I run all the anti-poverty strategies, and I feel that I've got a good handle on it because of where I live and the experience that I've had in my own community. So I'm able to do things like that. So the power to change is the thing that's interesting and makes it worthwhile. And people talk about leaving the Labour Party. I mean, I stayed in when it was tough, and I don't take away from anybody else. People had their own reasons why they left in the what shall we call it, the Blair years. And I just welcome back everybody who's come. However, there's been discussion, about people saying, well, we should let me start a new party, all the rest of it. We've got nowhere else to go. That's my thought. There is nowhere else except the Labour Party. Where the likes of what we're doing now, where we're bringing people who are like-minded together, that has got to be the way forward. We stay, we fight, and we organise, and that's what we're doing today.
Thank you very much, Catherine. And finally, Emma, thanks a lot.
Yeah, I mean, the Labour Party is needed now more than ever. I'm immensely proud to be a member of the Labour Party. I'm even prouder to be a member of Parliament in the Labour Party. And, none of us are where we are, and none of us are here without the members and without the support of our party. And, every single day, I'm just honoured to be in this amazing party. And I have to sometimes pinch myself to think, from that little kid sitting watching the news, thinking, one day I'd like to be able to have a voice and represent my community, that I got there. And I'm deeply conscious that I did not get there on my own, and I haven't remained here on my own. So thank you.
Thank you very much to the three speakers for giving up their time today. I think that's a really great start to the conference. I've said it several times, but I can't say it enough. The aim of NELL is to get socialists elected, and there's lots of food for thought there on how we may continue on our political journeys or start those journeys and encourage other people to do so. Lots of deep thought, lots of small practical suggestions and big practical suggestions, and really good things for NELL to think about how it continues to form itself and take that role of supporting people.